Every murder a person commits has a reason. After more than a century of American case files, those reasons reduce to a small, recognizable set. Investigators call them motives. They are the answer to the question every case begins with, and the question juries demand by the time it ends. Why? Money, jealousy, revenge, control, belief, illness, or simply opportunity. 7 categories, 7 signatures, 7 patterns that show up in the days, the weeks, sometimes the years before someone dies. The motive is rarely a mystery to the people closest to the killer. By the time the case file closes, it is rarely a mystery to anyone. This is every murder motive, explained in 15 minutes. Motive 1. Financial. The killer profits directly, through inheritance, through a life insurance payout, through a debt erased, a business absorbed, an estate transferred. Financial murder is the oldest motive in the file, and it leaves the cleanest paper trail. Insurance applications, bank statements, beneficiary changes, quiet phone calls in the weeks before the death. Camas, Utah, March 4, 2022. Eric Richins, 39, is found unresponsive in the bedroom of the home he shared with his wife, Kouri. The medical examiner finds 5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl in his body, illicit fentanyl, not medical grade. Investigators find something else. Between 2015 and 2017, his wife had quietly purchased 4 life insurance policies on his life, naming herself as the beneficiary. Total death benefit? Nearly $2 million. He never knew. Kouri Richins, who in the months after his death wrote and self-published a children's book about grief, was charged with aggravated murder, attempted aggravated murder for an earlier failed Valentine's Day poisoning, insurance fraud, and forgery. In 2026, a Summit County jury convicted her on all 5 counts in 3 hours. She faces 25 years to life. Financial motive leaves a paper trail. Investigators learn to follow it. Motive 2. Romantic or jealousy. The killer wants the partner gone, to be free of them, to keep them from someone else, or to take revenge for a perceived betrayal. This motive often involves a third person, a lover the killer wants to be with, or a rival the killer cannot accept. The plan is rarely solo. It almost always requires someone else's hands. Derry, New Hampshire, May 1, 1990. 24-year-old Greg Smart is shot in the head inside the condominium he shared with his wife. The investigation traces back to that wife, 22-year-old Pamela Smart, a high school media coordinator, and to her affair with one of the students she supervised, a 15-year-old named Billy Flynn. Flynn pulled the trigger. Pamela had asked him to. She had told him, prosecutors would later argue, that the only way they could be together was if her husband was dead. In 1991, Smart was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, witness tampering, and being an accomplice to first-degree murder. Under New Hampshire law, the accomplice charge carried a mandatory life without parole sentence. She has remained in prison for more than 30 years. The romantic motive almost always leaves a witness because, by definition, there was a third person in the marriage. Motive 3. Revenge. The killer is settling a score, real or imagined, recent or decades old. Revenge killings are usually personal, directed at the original wrongdoer, or, more chillingly, at the people closest to them. The pattern is often public, almost theatrical. The killer wants the target to know. Dallas, Texas, May 2, 2001. John Battaglia, an accountant in his mid-40s, takes his 2 daughters, 6-year-old Liberty and 9-year-old Faith, to his loft apartment in the Deep Ellum neighborhood for what is supposed to be a planned dinner. He calls his ex-wife, Mary Jean Pearl. He puts the girls on the phone. He has Faith ask her mother, in front of her younger sister, "Why do you want Daddy to go to jail?" Then he shoots both daughters dead while their mother listens. Texas prosecutors described the killings as ultimate revenge, retaliation for Pearl reporting his probation violations to his officer, the violations rooted in years of domestic violence assaults. Battaglia was convicted of capital murder in 2002. After 16 years on Texas death row, he was executed by lethal injection in February 2018. Mary Jean Pearl was in the witness room. She watched him die. The revenge motive almost always has a documented prior conflict. The case file usually starts long before the murder. Motive 4. Control or domination. The killer cannot accept losing the partner, and often, by extension, the children. They want to control the ending. This is the motive with the highest body count. Spouses don't disappear alone. Children, parents, anyone in the house, anyone who could testify, they go too. The killer chooses control over containment. Frederick, Colorado, August 13, 2018. Chris Watts, an oil and gas worker, strangles his pregnant wife Shannon in their bedroom shortly before dawn. Then he wakes their two daughters, 4-year-old Bella, 3-year-old Celeste. He drives all three to the worksite of his employer, Anadarko Petroleum, 20 miles east. Shannon goes into a shallow grave. Bella and Celeste go into 2 separate crude oil tanks. He returns home and looks into a news camera that morning and asks the public to help find his missing family. Watts had been having an affair with a co-worker. He told investigators later that morning that he had simply felt it had to happen. He didn't know why. Watts pleaded guilty to 9 counts, 3 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of first-degree murder of a child, unlawful termination of a pregnancy, and 3 counts of tampering with a deceased body. In November 2018, he was sentenced to life without parole, 3 times consecutive. The control motive is the one investigators most often see in domestic violence histories that were already documented before the murder. Motive 5. Cult or ideological. The killer believes something, a doctrine, a prophecy, a commanded mission. The killing is in service of that belief. This motive is rare but distinctive. It is rarely committed alone. There is almost always a leader, a system, and followers who have been conditioned over time, sometimes over years, to override their own conscience. Los Angeles, August 1969. Followers of Charles Manson, a 34-year-old ex-convict who had built a commune of mostly young women in the Death Valley area, drive into the hills above Beverly Hills. On the night of August 9th, they kill the actress Sharon Tate, who is 8.5 months pregnant, and 4 of her guests. The next night, they kill Lino and Rosemarie LaBianca in their home in the Los Feliz neighborhood. Manson believed the killings would ignite an apocalyptic race war he called Helter Skelter, a phrase he had taken from a Beatles song on the White Album. He believed his family would survive the war by hiding in an underground cave in the desert and would emerge to take power over the survivors. None of that came true. After a 7-month trial, in 1971, Manson and 3 of his followers were convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy. The original death sentences were later commuted to life when California briefly abolished the death penalty. Manson died in a state prison in 2017. The ideological motive is the one investigators have to learn the killer's worldview to understand. Until you do, the case looks senseless. Motive 6. Mental illness. In a small fraction of cases, the killer is responding not to the world, but to a psychiatric event, a psychotic break, severe untreated depression, postpartum psychosis. The act is real. The reasoning, in the legal sense, is not. Houston, Texas, June 20th, 2001. Andrea Yates, a 36-year-old former pediatric nurse, drowns her 5 children, one by one, in the family bathtub. Noah, who is 7, John, 5, Paul, 3, Luke, 2, Mary, 6 months. She had been treated multiple times for postpartum psychosis and major depression. She had attempted suicide twice. Her psychiatrist had warned her husband not to have more children. Mary had been born 7 months earlier. After the last child was dead, Yates calmly walked to the phone and called 911. She told the first officer at the door, "I killed my kids." Convicted of capital murder in her first trial in 2002, her conviction was overturned on appeal after a state expert was found to have given false testimony about a fictional Law and Order episode. At her second trial in 2006, a Harris County jury found her not guilty by reason of insanity. She was committed to a Texas state mental hospital, where she remains. Multiple psychiatrists who examined her have said she is among the sickest patients they have ever seen. The mental illness motive is the one juries have the hardest time with, because the law asks whether the killer knew the act was wrong, and severe psychosis can break that test in ways that look impossible from the outside. Motive 7. Opportunistic. There is no original plan to kill. The killer is committing another crime, a robbery, a burglary, a sexual assault, and a moment escalates. A door opens that wasn't supposed to. A witness appears. The killer reacts. Opportunistic murder is the most situational of the 7. It is also the hardest to predict and the most tightly tied to other criminal behavior, to parole histories, to addiction, to drift. Holcomb, Kansas, November 15, 1959. 2 parolees, Richard Hickock, 28, and Perry Smith, 31, drive from Kansas City to a farmhouse outside Garden City because Hickock's prison cellmate had told him the homeowner kept a safe full of cash on the property. Hickock had a plan: tie the family up, take the money, leave no witnesses. There was no safe. Herbert Clutter, a prosperous wheat farmer, paid his bills by check. The Clutter family, Herb, his wife Bonnie, 16-year-old Nancy, 14-year-old Kenyon, were home that Sunday morning. Hickock and Smith spent more than an hour searching the house. When they realized the safe did not exist, they killed all 4. The family had been cooperative. There were no witnesses. Both men were convicted of first-degree murder, 4 counts each, in March 1960. They were executed at Kansas State Penitentiary in April 1965. The case became Truman Capote's In Cold Blood, and it shaped American assumptions about strangers in the dark for the next 60 years. The opportunistic motive is the one that converts an attempted crime into a homicide. Investigators look for the original crime, and they trace what went wrong from there. 7 motives, different signatures, but one pattern they almost all share. The killer almost always knew the victim: spouses, children, parents, neighbors, patients of trust. The stranger in the parking lot is rare. The person who slept in the next room is not. The motives are also not always clean. Real cases blend. Financial overlaps with control. Jealousy overlaps with revenge. Cult overlaps with ideology. Investigators look for the one that explains the plan, because every motive on this list has a plan, except the last, opportunistic, where the plan is what failed. Knowing the motive doesn't bring anyone back, but it is, almost always, what closes the case. These are real cases, real people, real verdicts, real losses. Sources are listed at the end of this video and in the description below. If this casework matters to you, subscribe and turn on notifications. New episodes every week.